20 minutes of horror stories to fall all seep, too. Please enjoy. It was supposed to be a final adventure, a celebration, one last time to feel like kids before life pulled them in different directions. Ryan, Jace, and Lila had been best friends since elementary school. In their small Washington town, the woods were both playground and proving ground. They'd spent countless summers exploring the forest past Cinder Creek, climbing trees, catching frogs, daring each other to camp out under the stars. Now seniors, they were a few months from graduation. Ryan had already been accepted to a university on the East Coast. Jace was planning to work with his uncle in construction. Lila wasn't sure. She talked about art school, but mostly she talked about needing time to figure things out. That weekend in late May, they packed up Jace's old Subaru and drove out to their favorite spot by the creek. The forest was still damp from a spring rain earlier in the week. Wildflowers dotted the trails. It was quiet, peaceful. They set up a single tent near a mossy clearing, not far from the water. As the sun dropped, they built a fire and cooked cheap hot dogs on metal skewers, laughing about middle school crushes and who still owed who $5 from their last bet. Later, the conversation shifted to creepier things: urban legends, true crime stories, and local folklore. Jace brought up the Pine Witch, a local myth about a woman who vanished in those very woods 100 years ago, said to lure travelers away with the sound of someone they trust. No offense, Lila had said, but that story's so fake, you can practically see the gas station from here. Jace grinned. Exactly what someone in a horror movie would say right before getting snatched. They all laughed. But by 2:30 a.m., the fire was down to embers and the forest was thick with darkness. Ryan nudged Jace. Hey, I gotta take a leak. Come with? Jace groaned, rubbing his eyes. You afraid a bear's gonna get you? No, Ryan said, already putting on his shoes. I'm afraid you're gonna snore loud enough to summon one. Lila, half asleep in her sleeping bag, mumbled, Leave the flashlight. Ryan tossed it toward her. We'll be right back. They stepped off the trail into the trees, maybe 100 yards out. The forest at night was different. Quiet, but not silent. The kind of quiet that felt like it was waiting. They talked just to break it up, making jokes about the Pine Witch and betting whether Ryan would trip over a root. It took less than 10 minutes. But when they got back, something was off. The tent flap was open. The flashlight they'd left with Lila was lying outside, blinking on and off like the battery was dying. Ryan crouched and looked inside. Lila? The sleeping bags were empty. Her boots were gone. She probably went to the bathroom too, Jace said, but his voice wasn't confident. They waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Ryan walked the trail toward the creek. Jace went the opposite way toward the old fire pit. No sign. They called out for her again and again. No answer, no rustling, just trees and stillness. At 4 a.m., panic hit. By sunrise, they'd searched as far as they could without getting lost themselves. They ran back to the car and drove to the ranger station. A search was launched. Local police got involved. Drones scanned the area. Search dogs combed every inch from the tent to the creek. Nothing. Not even footprints. On the third day, a ranger found Lila's necklace, a silver chain with a tiny opal stone, hanging from a low pine branch above the tent. No one could explain how it got there. The branch was too high to reach without climbing, and Lila never took it off. Ever. Weeks passed, then months. Rumors started, as they always do in small towns. Some said she ran away. Some blamed Ryan and Jace, said maybe there had been a fight or worse. But there was no evidence of foul play, no signs of struggle. Ryan stopped talking. Jace dropped out before graduation. Their friendship fractured under the weight of grief and suspicion. The woods past Cinder Creek were eventually closed off, signs posted, trails rerouted. But people still whisper about what happened. Some say they hear laughter late at night, deep in the trees. Others claim to have seen a girl standing just off the path, barefoot, staring back at them with wide eyes before disappearing into the brush. But Ryan knows none of it is just stories, because the last night they ever saw Lila, he swore he heard her voice, calling faintly from deeper in the forest, just as they turned back toward the tent. But when he called her name, the voice didn't answer. The pines don't whisper back, and they never found her.
Part 1. The Gate That Bleeds. In the secluded heart of Aomori Prefecture, surrounded by forests so ancient they whisper even when the wind is still, lies a forbidden path. Akai Michi, the Red Road. The trail is unmarked, unpaved, and unseen unless you already believe it's there. It leads to something older than Japan itself. At its end stands the blood-red torii gate of Shuten Jinja, the shrine of the final heaven. Its wood always looks wet. The gate never fades. Even after centuries, it stands unrotted and unbowed. Locals will not look at it. They speak of it only in riddles and fear. Once, long ago, the people of a mountain village worshipped a god there. Not a kami of rice or sun. No. This one was different. It had no name. Only hunger. Its worship required not devotion, but sight. Eyes. Offerings of vision. It was said that those who stared too long at its altar were seen in return, and what was seen was taken. One villager, the last priest, sealed the shrine after the villagers vanished, offering his own sight in exchange for the curse to be bound. But nothing stays sealed forever. Part 2. Dash the Channel. In 2021, 4 university students from Tokyo ran a mid-tier paranormal YouTube channel, Yami Ventures. Kenta, the ambitious host, was chasing the next viral upload. His girlfriend Mari handled research and editing. Junpei was the tech guy, drones, sound gear, lighting. And then there was Saki, quiet, intense, with an uncanny sense for places that shouldn't be touched. Kenta stumbled upon a half-burned map fragment on a defunct occult blog post, showing a single red torii in the forest marked Shuten. He became obsessed. A shrine that bleeds? This is gold, he told the group. They debated, but Kenta's enthusiasm wore them down. They rented a van and drove 6 hours to the edge of the forest. From there they hiked deeper than any marked trail. Trees pressed in like walls. The sun dimmed unnaturally as they approached the torii. It was larger than expected, at least 10 feet tall, flanked by decaying stone lanterns. The gates stood untouched by time. Splotches of fresh crimson streaked the columns like handprints. Paint, probably, Junpei mumbled. But Saki whispered, "It's still warm." Part 3. Through the gate. Mari hesitated, her breath caught in her throat as they crossed beneath the torii. The instant her foot hit the other side, the air shifted, thicker, colder. Birds fell silent. Even the wind refused to follow them. They emerged into a clearing ringed by unnaturally tall trees. At its center stood the shrine. Shuten Jinja was cracked but standing. The wood was blackened with age and soot. Its steps bowed and roped off with a decayed Shimenawa cord. The dolls were the first thing they noticed. Hundreds, maybe more, lining the inside. Their eyes were missing. Hollow. Some had bloody smears where the eyes once were. Kenta laughed nervously. Someone's been watching too many horror films. But Saki wasn't laughing. Part 4. The Recordings. That night, Junpei flew the drone above the shrine. From the air, they saw the impossible. The shrine, gate, and path formed a massive eye-shaped glyph, carved into the forest floor with unnatural precision. Junpei tried to steer the drone closer, but it plummeted. The camera feed turned to static. Then came one clear frame. Just one. A pale face, expressionless. No eyes. Just black hollow sockets. They slept uneasily. Saki whispered in her dreams, "Don't look at the altar. It's looking back." Mari heard it. But when she woke Saki, her friend didn't remember anything. The next morning, Junpei was gone. His camera was left outside the tent, lens cracked. The final footage showed him walking toward the shrine alone, flashlight flickering. Then the sound of wind. No. Breathing. Heavy. Inhuman. Then static. They searched for hours, but the forest twisted. Paths looped back to the torii. Trees changed places. Saki screamed at one point, claiming the dolls were outside now, lining the trees, their eyeless faces turned toward her. Part 5. The Descent. Kenta, once skeptical, began to unravel. He started praying at the altar, muttering in a language none of them understood. He gouged old kanji into his chest with a pocket knife. Mari begged him to stop, but he said the god had spoken, that they were the first in centuries to see it, that they must offer what was promised. That night, Mari ran. Saki followed, but they found her kneeling in front of the torii. She had gouged out her own eyes. Blood streaked her cheeks. "Can't look if you don't have eyes," she whispered. "He can't find you if you're blind." Part 6. The shrine beneath Kenta disappeared the next morning. Saki, now alone, wandered the shrine's grounds. Something called to her below it, under the floorboards. A crawlspace revealed a hidden staircase, descending deeper than the earth should allow. At the bottom, a chamber of offerings. Piles of eyes, some still wet, some shriveled with age. Bones scattered like petals around a massive obsidian altar carved with a single symbol. An eye, crying blood. Saki felt it behind her. She turned. She screamed. Part 7. Aftermath. 3 weeks later, hikers found Saki on the edge of the Red Road, barefoot, blind, and covered in blood that wasn't hers. She never spoke again, except once. When a local priest tried to bless her, she began laughing. Not her voice, but a deeper, older one that echoed through the temple hall. The gate remembers. The god waits. All who see will bleed. The footage was never released. The Yami Ventures channel was deleted. Kenta, Mari, and Junpei were never found. The gate still stands, and it still bleeds.
The walls whisper corn. The Wilkins family had lost a lot in the city. Michael's job at the firm dried up after a messy downsizing. Laura's boutique closed down within weeks of the pandemic. Their teenage daughter Emily fell in with the wrong crowd and was caught stealing twice. Their youngest, Jake, barely spoke anymore. The city, Laura decided, was killing them. So they bought a house they couldn't believe they could afford. A 2-story white farmhouse in Iowa, isolated and ancient, miles from anything. The real estate listing had just a few words. Vintage charm, needs love, perfect for families. The first time they saw it in person, the realtor's GPS gave out 5 miles from the house. They followed crude wooden signs nailed to fence posts, each one painted with a red arrow pointing deeper into nothing. Finally, they arrived. The house stood like a ghost, weather-worn, peeling, surrounded on all sides by a vast and endless cornfield that stretched past the horizon. It swayed like a golden sea, whispering under the wind. A crooked barn leaned nearby, its roof long since given up the fight with time. "This is it?" Emily asked, arms crossed. Jake just stared into the field. "It's watching," he whispered. Michael laughed nervously, tousling his son's hair. "It's corn, buddy." The first few days passed uneventfully. They unpacked, cleaned, opened windows to let the mustiness out. There was no Wi-Fi, but Laura said that was a good thing. Maybe we'll actually talk for once. But there were things they didn't notice at first. Jake began waking up in the middle of the night, staring into the darkness at corners of the room. He wouldn't say what he saw, only that he didn't like the breathing. One morning, Laura found him standing just inside the cornfield. No shoes, no jacket. He didn't seem cold. "I heard her humming," he said. "She wanted to show me her house." Laura looked but saw no one. Still, she put new locks on the doors. That same week, Emily came into the kitchen pale as a sheet. "There's something in the attic." They found raccoon droppings, scratched wood, a broken mirror face down on the floor. But it didn't explain the smell, like hot breath and soil, and the long black handprints smudged across the ceiling beam. It got worse quickly. At night, the scratching began in the walls. At first, it was soft, a light scraping like fingernails. Then it grew deeper, clawing, dragging. Emily began to sleep with headphones in, but even then she swore she heard it whispering her name through the static. Jake stopped using his words altogether. He only whispered now, quiet, fast strings of nonsense over and over. "The corn is not asleep. The corn is not asleep. The corn is not asleep." Michael started hearing things. He'd sit in the barn, pretending to work on repairs, but mostly trying to get away from the tension in the house. That's when he'd hear it, just outside the door, deep in the stalks, wet breathing, low, guttural chuckling, something brushing against the wood, like it was testing the edge. One day, he stepped outside with a flashlight, trying to prove it was nothing. The corn swallowed the light. The sound of the leaves rustling turned violent, urgent. He backed away fast. When he returned to the house, the kitchen clock had stopped. It hadn't just broken. The hands had melted, drooping down like they'd been in an oven. Then came the thing in the mirror. Emily screamed loud enough to bring the whole family running. She'd been brushing her teeth when the bathroom mirror fogged over, then cleared, showing a reflection behind her. A tall black figure with no eyes, just a jagged, grinning mouth full of teeth that didn't fit. But when she turned, no one was there, just the medicine cabinet wide open and Jake standing silently in the hallway. "You shouldn't have seen him," he said. That night, the whispers came from inside the walls. Not just scratching anymore. Voices, low, churning things that didn't speak in English, but still managed to say awful, cruel things. The walls throbbed. The floor vibrated like something large was crawling through the foundation. Laura tried to call for help. No signal. Michael tried to start the car. Dead battery. Emily tried to run, but the corn had grown. It towered above the house now, impossibly tall, 30 feet high and dense. The path to the road was gone. No matter how far they ran into the field, they ended up back at the porch. They were sealed in. On the 5th night, they found a new room. Jake led them to it, an old door behind the pantry shelves that none of them remembered. It led to a staircase spiraling down, deep beneath the house. The walls were made of rough earth, and the air was damp and hot like breath. At the bottom was a small circular chamber. In the center, a stone altar, carved with symbols none of them could read, and around it, corn husks, rotted animal bones, and finger-length black candles burned to stubs. Jake climbed the altar like it was his bed. "This is where the last family gave him a name," he said, smiling. Michael pulled him down. They ran, but it was too late. That night, the walls began to bleed. Dark streaks of thick black-red fluid ran from the corners, pooling on the floor. The house groaned under its own weight, like something was growing inside it. Emily found herself waking up in places she didn't fall asleep. At the foot of Jake's bed, crouched in the closet, or once standing outside in the corn with bare feet, and no memory of how she got there. Laura began talking in her sleep, not in her voice, not in any voice that should come from a human mouth. Then Michael disappeared. Gone. Vanished. No blood, no sign of struggle. Just a single cornstalk growing from the center of the bed where he'd been sleeping. By morning, it was 6 feet tall. The final night, lightning flashed, revealing the silhouette of something massive crawling on the roof. The chimney cracked. Windows exploded inward. The voice in the walls grew loud enough to shake pictures off the walls. The corn feeds the house feeds me. Laura tried to smother Jake, believing it was the only way to end it. But the walls reacted, flinging her across the room like a rag doll. Emily screamed, dragging Jake out the front door, but the ground outside had cracked open into black furrows, lined with writhing roots and twitching teeth. They were never seen again, except for one new story that surfaced 3 years later. Another young family, another cheap property listing, same house, same field, and Jake, older now, smiling in the listing photo, hand resting gently on the shoulder of the family's daughter. They never left. They just became part of the walls,